Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Welcome to another edition of my Instagram on YouTube. As a reminder, Instagram is where I do most of my writing now, and YouTube is where I speak about my writing. So if you haven't, go ahead and go on Instagram, go to my page at Willis Swan. You can see some of my writings. You can debate, comment, like, disagree, whatever it is. At the end of the day, ideas are tools that help us navigate the world, including that idea. So we're here to figure out what makes sense and what doesn't, and help us traverse life with as much ease, poise, joy, love, freedom, and peace as possible. So it's funny to reflect on my life and realize how unaware I was, especially like 10 years ago, in my early 20s. And I'm sure I'll think the same in another 10 years, which is, I guess, a good thing. It means that I'm growing and I'm learning. But just as one example, in my personal life, in the past, and I guess still now, I prided myself on caring less than my partner. I was always ready to leave the relationship first and came up with different reasons for why it made sense. Like maybe I was changing schools, or I'm moving across the country, or maybe she's not really the one, etc., etc., etc. And often she would be more emotionally invested than I was, and I kind of prided myself on that. And that was just my pattern. But I didn't realize that, or I didn't understand why I had this pattern. And it wasn't until I learned about the five souls wounds that I realized and understood a bit more what was going on. And Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, has this quote that until you make your unconscious conscious, it will direct you and you will call it fate. And so a lot of times things happen in our lives or in people's lives, and we're like, why does this keep happening? Like, what's going on? And if we don't take the time to reflect and try to understand what's going on, the patterns will continue. And so, with regards to the five souls wounds, basically what they are is when we are children, we have two competing needs. We have the need to be authentic, which is to be who we are, and we have the need to stay alive. And when we're children and little kids, in order to stay alive, because we're not self sufficient, we have to attach to a caregiver, to a mother, to a father, to a primary adult who can take care of us and keep us alive. And this is a non negotiable need when we're a kid, when we're young. And so when there's a scenario that comes up where we must choose between, this isn't conscious, by the way, it's just when we're young children and some situation comes up where we have to choose our attachment or our authenticity, we will choose our attachment, because otherwise we will die. Otherwise we our brain believes that if we're not attached to anyone, then we can't survive on our own. And so we suppress our authenticity in order to stay attached. And this is fine and dandy when we're kids, but when we get older and become adults, we don't necessarily need to rely on an attachment to survive. And actually, a big part of maturation is learning to be detached from certain things. um, and prioritizing our authenticity. However, some people never make this switch, and so they continue to value their attachments, and this creates a lot of different problems in our lives as adults. So, if going back, so how we manage to stay attached and suppress our authenticity is by wearing different types of masks. And these masks depend on the specific wound that we experienced. And so, for example, if I felt rejected by my father, because when you're a kid you want to be close with your parents, but my dad was always very busy, or like prioritized his work stuff because there was a lot going on there, and he basically ignored his children to some extent, to a large extent. I felt rejected, and in order to not feel the pain of that rejection, I put on my withdrawn mask of I don't care. I'm going to close my heart, use my brain, um, just get good at stuff, etc., etc. Other people have different wounds and different masks. So if you had a parent who abandoned you, then you might wear the mask of dependency. You start to rely on certain people or things or substances like addictions, um, because you need to depend on something external instead of yourself. Betrayal is another big one. If you felt like you were betrayed by someone that you trusted, people tend to cope with this by becoming very controlling, because they don't want to be hurt again. So they try to control their environment and other people, when really the only thing that you can truly control is yourself. So these are all different wounds and different masks that people wear. And once I learned this, I realized, okay, I see why, I can see how the wound from my childhood leads me to the 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 mask that manifests in my relationships. And a lot of times this stuff is passed down through generations, and unless someone has the awareness and does the work to break the pattern, a lot of times it gets passed down unconsciously. So, for example, my father probably experienced something similar with his father, and just continued to pass it down because they didn't really prioritize or focus on this introspective therapy, self-help, personal development, you know, kind of work. And learning about the five soul wounds was a game changer for me because it allowed me to a framework with which to notice myself whenever I was acting withdrawn, whenever I was in my mask, in my wound, acting withdrawn, um, considering acting harsh or rigid because I thought that things were unfair, which again is something that only humans can perceive. There's no animals besides humans who can perceive things as unfair. Um, Despite how, I mean, if you were a chicken in a factory, you in an animal factory, you would not think things were fair. Or if you were a dog, one dog is like in this really nice house, and the other dog is a street dog, like scavenging for food. That's not fair, also. But dogs don't really can't, as far as I know, cannot perceive things as fair or unfair. It is only humans with our prefrontal cortexes and our version of consciousness that can perceive these things. They don't actually exist outside of our own perception. Um, but again, my point is that I can notice these things, and when I notice these things, I can recognize that they're not necessarily reflective of reality, and I can take a step back, empower myself in that stillness, and be a little bit more conscious in my interpretation of what's going on and in my subsequent actions in the way that I deal with people. There's I react much less from my wound, and I'm able to act from a more empowered, centered, aligned place because of this awareness. And so again, that's a huge step. The awareness piece is like the first part of it for me, and recognizing that we do have the power between stimulus and response. We have that ability to be present, and through our free will, we can consciously choose to break or choose new patterns or new actions or new beliefs. So that is also a power that I believe is unique to humans as the only animals on the planet who can do that, who have free will. And I believe that's it. So just going through here, taking responsibility of whatever situation we're in is really the only way that we can change it. Otherwise, we're just being victims. It's not always easy. Life can be difficult, and taking a step back does require a lot of willpower and energy, mental bandwidth. But there's always a silver lining. There's always a hidden door that can lead to a more beautiful future. And we always have power in the present moment. Life is not about the cards you're dealt, it's about how you play your hand. There's many people who, of course, there's it's a bit of both, right? It's a bit of nature and nurture. It's a combination of the cards you're dealt and how you play your hand. But again, I would say that most people overestimate the importance of the cards that they're dealt and underestimate the power that comes with how you play your hand. Especially if you're watching this and you're in a Western country, the chances that you have been dealt a far better hand is very high. Most of us tend to underestimate how good things are for us relative to the world, population of the world, relative to human history. And as always, if you would like some support, if you would like some accountability, some help, a new perspective, I'm here. I do one-on-one coaching. Apply, reach out to me, follow me on Instagram. Let me know. We can have a conversation. This is what I love to do. I'm still getting better, obviously, and let's figure something out and make the future for ourselves and the world just a little bit brighter. That's it. I'm Willis. Thank you if you made it this far. I will see you in the next video.